and welcome to our latest, the penultimate episode of NaPoWriMo 2022. My name is Bex Sherwood. I am your guide through National Poetry Writing Month. April, the challenge for poets everywhere to write more poetry, whether that is 30 poems in 30 days. You wonderful souls, if you managed it, we're out of April, so if you managed the task of NaPoWriMo, I applaud you. Hats off to you. You are truly the not the hero we deserve, but the hero we needed. We have vanquished our villanelles. We've written poetry in terza rima and standard habby. We have bested found poetry. And this week that's all of them, right? And this week we are conquering contrapuntal poetry. Please join me in welcoming my guests and my pals, Kev, Mark, and Katie. Yay!
Hello.
We are all so cheerful today because it is the end of NaPoWriMo.
It's over.
We did it.
It's not that we don't love doing it, because we do, and we get poems out of it, and every year we're like, can't wait for it to be NaPoWriMo, so we get a whole bunch of new poems. But it is difficult when there's lots going on, obviously shows and illnesses and life just getting in the way. But we've made it, and I believe that everyone has contrapuntal poems for this week. And then obviously we've all
Gallie did not seem sure.
I don't think it's very good.
Okay. Well, we do the analysis on this channel, Mark. So we'll wait until it's your turn, and then
it's always good.
And it is always good. Everyone always goes, "So I didn't like mine this week," and then like busts out like the Odyssey. So anyway, for the uninitiated, if you're joining us for the first time, it's a weird place to start, but you know, I like your style. A National Poetry Writing Month, or NaPoWriMo, is my poetry challenge.
It's Contrapuntal Week. You can start anywhere.
Everything's in so many orders.
4 mirrors function, baby.
Oh my goodness. Now I'm starting to think maybe I didn't write my contrapuntal correctly, but we will get to that when we talk about our form. But in the meantime, National Poetry Writing Month, the month of April, while now over, encourages folk to write poems every day. There's loads of channels that do different prompts and sharing ideas. There's like an official one, and there's like loads of unofficial ones like us, where we do our 5 forms in 5 weeks. If you are out with April and you would still like to do, also link to Katie's Out With poem, if you are out with April and you would like to do writing, it's not like the other 11 months of the year, you cannot do writing. So we will hopefully maybe write 1 poem outside of NaPoWriMo this year, but we'll
Doubtful.
see.
I'm pretty sure only April is when we
can't vote or unable to in the other.
It's like I think there's a law. I don't know. Maybe it's just a Scottish thing. So obviously our last form we are looking at is contrapuntal poetry. Poetry. Katie. Oh my goodness. Please rescue me from this word hell by putting me in a new word hell that is contrapuntal poetry.
Yay! So contrapuntal poetry, as Kev said earlier, you can kind of start anywhere. So it's a form of poetry where there are multiple sections of text, and there are multiple ways of reading those sections of text. So one of the most common ones, and I don't know what version of it everyone did, so I'm very, very curious to find out, but one of the most common ways of doing contrapuntal poetry is you have a column here and a column here of text. And there are 2 different ways of reading it. So one is to just read this column, and
this
then
is an excellent description for audio listeners, Kate.
Just
really
our podcast pals. Okay. This is such a good point. I'm so sorry, audio podcast pals.
But if only you were a PhD of words.
If only I were a PhD. If only that actually helped me speaking in everyday life. Okay, let me start that again. So contrapuntal poetry, one of the most common forms is that you have 2 columns of text. You can just read the first column by itself, and then you can just read the second column by itself, and then you can read all the way across. So read across both columns to create a third reading of the poem. You can do that. You can have 3 columns. You can do a Venn diagram. There are so many different ways of doing contrapuntal poetry. The basic idea of it, though, is that it is a bit like a choose your own adventure poem, and it's a way of playing with multiple different voices or multiple different concepts and finding harmony or dissonance between these concepts. I hope that was helpful. It's really one of those forms where, and apologies again, podcast listeners, it's easiest to understand if you see it. So I would highly encourage you, if that just left you confused, to look up a contrapuntal poem online, look at it, and then you'll go, oh, okay, I see how that works.
It is very likely that all of our contrapuntal poems will be posted up on our Instagram page. So if you are listening to it, you can head over to Instagram, see all the poems there. We'll put them all in a nice post for you. I'll jazz it up, make it look spicy.
Oh,
If you've downloaded this off a podcast platform, you know how to get YouTube. Just go and watch this one. Just do this one. You can listen to the rest, but go watch this one. Come on.
Okay. Well, there's your options.
Subscribe while you're there.
Yeah, subscribe. You could like, if you are on podcast, please rate us. Okay, we can move on from the plugs and the threats now.
Angriest plugger in the world, Ken.
He's furious.
Why wouldn't you go and subscribe? Why wouldn't you?
It's free.
Hey, I know 80% of the people that are watching this video even aren't subscribed. So subscribe. Just do it. It's easy. It'll help us.
Wow. Savage.
Thanks, pals. So
Right.
Poetry.
Yeah, we'll move on from Kev. You need to write an analytics poem, and then you can rant about it for as long as you want.
Oh, all right. Okay, I'm in.
Okay,
I'm in.
challenge.
Week 6,
Challenge set.
NaPoWriMo. Let's
Oh
do
no,
this.
we're not doing
No,
it.
no,
extra,
no, no,
just
no,
for
no.
Kev.
We were done. We were done. We were done. We were.
Well, Kev, you seem delighted by the fact that this, other than obviously the analytics poem, is your final poem. Would you like to share first?
Yeah, sure. I really enjoyed this one. It's what a fun one to end on, because I think I really struggled last week. Like that was just it was tough, and I wasn't super happy with what I got. Like it was decent, it was fine, but like this week I just tumbled out. I was done really quickly. I really liked the contrapuntal form. I was like, I watched the workshop, and I was like, that Harry Baker one really kind of
So good.
it just set it up so well. And there was something that Katie says in her workshop that like him using rhyme is him going an extra mile, and that kind of made sense to me, right? Well, that'll make it harder. But as soon as I looked at it, and I was like, structurally, it's 4 separate poems on a similar theme. Each poem is a 4-line sort of stanza couplet, right? So like when I saw that, I was like, oh, that, because I like rhyme, I like rhythm. As soon as a form kind of pushes me away from being able to play around with rhythm, I just go, this is now just me kind of saying disconnected words. It doesn't feel correct, right? So I was like, oh, this is cool. I'll try and do a kind of rhyme structure to it. And that really helped me. So like, there's kind of 2 rhyme structures to it. I kind of did for both. You can read this poem 3 separate ways. And the rhyme structure kind of works. It's interesting. But what I'll do is I'll read top to bottom on the left-hand column, top to bottom on the right-hand column, and then I will read line by line going down across the 2. So cool. My 3 a.m. brain ticks different. It whirls inside my skull, always reaching the same conclusion. You could change the world. But morning comes. Bloodshot eyes blink in the light, the will to change, fading with the night. I see further in the darkness. I hear clearer in the silence. There is clarity in my tiredness, more than you even realize. A fog descends. Let the grind commence. A dream that ends. Was it all pretend? My 3 a.m. brain ticks different. I see further in the darkness. It whirls inside my skull. I hear clearer in the silence, always reaching the same conclusion. There is clarity in my tiredness. You could change the world more than you even realize. The morning comes. A fog descends. Bloodshot eyes blink in the light. Let the grind commence. The will to change, a dream that ends, fading with the night. Was it all pretend?
So incredibly
good. I love contrapuntal poetry. It is so, there's something so smug in its cleverness. Like when you finish it, you feel so like, it's a very gratifying, and that's such
you
a
could
cool...
read it. You could read it a third way, where you could read it down column 1 and then, or you could go like stanza 1, top of column 1, and then move across and read stanza 2, and then go back down to the left. So you can read it, those 3 ways, which is fun.
Wild.
That's really class.
It's amazing as well what you say about rhyme, because as I say in the workshop, like, you do not have to use any rhyme or rhythm in contrapuntal. Like, it is hard enough writing effectively 2 poems that also work when combined. But I love that for you, actually using the rhyme made it more familiar and easier to you. And it's, again, another example of more restrictions can sometimes be more helpful. But
I think it's the way I write. Like, I think I'm often, because I get into a flow and I'll get like a few lines and I go, oh, I like that. And then I'm like, okay, well, I need to either get out of this rhyme with another one, or match this rhyme, or like play with it, or keep a certain rhythm. And so then I'm writing with the theme and the thought in mind, but I'm writing trying to hit a certain sound. And so then that informs the next couple of lines. And then, so that's always how I write. I write in little like bursts where I like follow the pattern. And then when I get bored of it or whatever, I try and mix it up, and it kind of guides what language goes in. So that was a great way to be able to write this, because I was like, okay, get that, like that first stanza, from my 3 a.m. brain down to You Could Change the World. And then you're like, okay, well, how do you match that into this half? And so then using the 2 where I used the couplets, and then on this side I used just 1 repeating rhyme for each sound. It's like darkness, silence, tiredness, realize. I know realize doesn't really rhyme, but whatever. And so doing that like worked well. It was just easy to pull to.
It's fascinating that adding that made it easier, because or not easier, but made it click more, especially for you. Because as you're saying that, I kind of, I was a bit like, it's like when you started saying about rhyme, I went, that's just showing off more than actually being helpful. But it's what a great poem. That's very annoying for me. Yeah.
I thought thematically it worked quite well as well, because like I was like, and that's always the question, right? How do you use a form to highlight something, rather than it just being like a crossword to fill out, like where it's like you could put anything in there, it doesn't really matter, you've solved the puzzle. And so I think then you have to lean theme into form, and you need to have them like work together. And so I thought it worked as a kind of, I was like, what is this form? Okay, it's disconnected ideas kind of orbiting each other. It's the hint of a cohesive thought stripped into parts. And I was, that took me straight to like a dream, or like being really tired, or like that kind of idea of, that we all do it, sitting in bed, and what's a dream, what's awake, what's your kind of conscious thought. And so it worked quite well, I thought.
It's great too, because your other poem about sort of sleeplessness is Insomnia, which is one of your oldest poems, I think. And it's funny because that poem plays a lot with not like a structured form. It's not in form, but it really innovates with rhythm and with like different lists and different structures and rhythms. And it's a fascinating poem. There are videos of it online.
Probably.
I'm sure we'll find it.
So we'll try
maybe
to
available
below.
Only on Patreon. So
potential. But in any case, it made me think so much about about themes, about like how great contrapuntal poetry is for talking about insomnia, because it's like your mind making connections that maybe it's not supposed to make, and thoughts flowing into each other, and like the boundary between these stanzas is actually really porous and breaking all the rules of what you thought, when your brain's like, rah. So
I've had a lot of bouts of like sleeplessness recently. So I feel that where it's just like it kind of blends all days together, because every 2 a.m. is exactly the same. Like every time you reach that, like it goes to 4 a.m. you're still not asleep, and it's like that, it's that same like feeling every time, even if it's like slightly different in terms of like the context or why or where or whatever. So it's it's interesting. I think it's a really great way to like use the form in a way where it like fully helps it like feel completed, rather than sort of separate, you know what I mean? Because those 2 poems could feel very it could feel very like, oh, cool, they've just smushed it together. But it feels like if you just read that last bit, that is a great piece on its own. And if you've just read one of those poems, they feel like complete even without the other. You know what I mean? I think that's where it's like the real challenge in contrapuntal.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's like getting a through line. I think I was tempted to kind of push to tell two contradictory sides, you know, to have it be an argument, or to have it be like a, you know, oh, but actually I'm saying this. And then I was like, no, I think there's a way here to kind of say something more whole. So yeah, it's a fun form to play with. I really enjoyed it. It is a bit more of a jigsaw puzzle though. I think there's a, like, that idea of the sort of like, you know, and I do it a lot. Like I go to bed going like, right, but tomorrow you're going to get up and you're going to like just do all the things that you're supposed to do. And there's this clarity of like, no, I'm good. If only I didn't need to go to bed now. If only I could start here, right? But like, I think there is more to that to explore than contrapuntal kind of allows. But like, and I think that would be my sum up a bit on NaPoWriMo, is I think like writing in form this way is really good to like explore ideas. I think it's maybe like, it would be a good workshop technique, right? Like, okay, we're going to talk about some ideas. How about take that idea and write it as a sonnet to get the ball rolling? But like, interesting.
No, that's great.
Dope, though.
Well, congratulations on your 5 poems. You've completed NaPoWriMo.
Cool.
This
was fun. I'll catch you guys later.
No, excuse you.
Okay, mister, I've read my poem at the open mic and now I'm going to immediately leave.
Oh, thou shalt not leave after reading your shitty little poem or song.
That's the rules, 100% the rules.
The shade.
Shade. Thanks, Kev, for leaving and coming back, and probably meaning that future Bex has to now edit multiple overlays.
That'll be fine. You can just keep it the same way and use the blank screen.
Okay, great.
Go, Kev.
Well,
Go, Kev.
Okay, Kev, you're done. Do you want to, you went first. Do you want to nominate who has to go next?
Well, I don't know. That's a lot of pressure. Gallie seemed trepidatious about his, so let's go with him. Let's sandwich him in.
I like it.
And you or Kate can bring the big guns later.
Yeah,
okay, sure.
Someone more confident with it at the end. That's smart. It's not that I don't like contrapuntal poetry.
That's a strong start.
Right? It's not that I don't.
I'm sure contrapuntal poetry has nothing but nice things to say about you.
Nothing but nice things to say about me. But I think Kev touched on it, and it's definitely the most fiddly of any of the forms I feel that we've done. Maybe not the most fiddly of any form. Obviously, editing and tinkering, there is always an element of fiddle, like, you know, thingy to that. But I had an initial annoyance with this one because last year I discovered, looking back, that my concrete poem could also probably be read as a contrapuntal because it was 5 different parts of a whole doing the avatar with different elements, and you could read. So that was really annoying because I'd already done quite an interesting way of doing that. Says me, Katie, who has done all of these and had to have done a poem in all of the workshops, so I should shit there.
I mean, sometimes it weren't great.
No,
anyone who's seen the workshops knows those example poems are dicey.
No, standard Habby one is gibberish.
Which one?
The standard Habby one is gibberish.
Oh, you mean my beautiful ode to the bounty bar?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
But no, like this one was. This one was annoying, and I think maybe I'm more down on it because we're like, I'll preface it this now, is I don't think this is a particularly like spooky or dark one for me. This one might be a bit different in tone. I still don't know necessarily whether it's a poem, and I don't know whether anyone else had the same thing. I think it fits. It's a contrapuntal, but my struggle was because I've done it in the 2 columns ways described by Katie. So there'll be a column 1 down the way, column 2 down the way, and then the third poem going left to right, as it were. But I found it really difficult for like my poem 3 to not just be a longer version of poem 1, if that makes sense. Like doing poem 1 is one thing, poem 2 is its own thing, but then poem 3 is kind of poem 1 but with some extra stuff. You know, and that was bugging me and annoying me. But the idea I kind of went with, I decided not to do the Frankenstein idea in case given by Bex. last
I
time.
didn't. I wish you had done it.
Although I did
well.
really like that. And then I really liked what Katie said at the start of this episode about doing a choose your own adventure. I was like, oh, these are all way better ideas than. Well, I just went the idea of like this thing had the idea of like reflections to me, not in the same way as like the maybe like the, you know, like a palindrome poem might is literally that reflection thing. But between the two of these two coming together make the whole, and I felt like the two sides of a mirror. So yeah, I mean, we'll see. Like I said, like you said earlier, you guys do the critique. I'm just here to read the poem, or to read the two poems. So yeah, I'll read it the same way that Kev did. I'll read column 1, top to bottom, column 2, top to bottom, and then 3 left to right. And I'll sort of say 1, 2, and 3 beforehand, although 3 will be obvious. So this is column 1. We are beautiful. Mind, body, and soul. Every single day we are more than what we were before. It's easy to draw a circle around and paint a smiley face. You have amazing eyes. So deep, you get lost. Perfect. 2. Two sides of the same reflection, but we are not the same in every way. We can see the past mistakes. The scars highlight every imperfection, the things we hate most in the steam. Don't look. Looking is how you lose. And so 3. We are two sides of the same reflection. Beautiful, but we are not the same, mind, body, and soul in every way. Every single day we can see we are more than the past mistakes, what we were before the scars. It's easy to highlight every imperfection, draw a circle around the things we hate most, and paint a smiley face in the steam. You have amazing eyes. Don't look so deep you get lost looking. Perfect is how you lose.
Wow.
Holy butt monkeys.
Dude, I could not disagree with you more in what you said before the poem. That's like, as you were saying, I think I agree with you. Like that's a way to do a contrapuntal. And I think I did that to a degree that like, it's not saying contradictory things, it's saying a similar thing, but very much in the reading, like that is a happy love poem. The surface, that is the image in the glass, right? Yeah. Whereas then that next piece is the things you don't like seeing in the glass, the thing you don't like seeing in the mirror, and then the two together is the balance between it, finding like a way to see what you see and not love it or hate it, but be okay. Like that's what I took from it. Certainly.
No, I'm glad that came through because you nailed what I went for. Like, yeah,
and your tone and delivery really emphasizes it as well, which is what I know me and you are the biggest proponents of it. That like these things should be said out loud, because I don't know if that would come across the same way when it's written down, and maybe you're looking at it written down and going, this is kind of looping. I don't think that's a problem in a contrapuntal poem if it is looping. Mine certainly is. But I also think it's interesting the way you say it of like, these are 3 poems, which is not what I ever thought. I thought there's 2 ways. There is reading all of column 1, then all of column 2, and that is a version of the poem. And then the second reading is reading all the way along the lines, top to bottom. That's the second reading of the poem. But like, that they are integral to each other. Yeah. So like, blown away.
You know, I get what you mean. Yeah, I kind of drew like a very long line down in the middle, and like those are the 2 that separated by the reflection, and you hit it there as with however you want to look at it, whether one side is like the skin deep, the narcissist, the loving voice to yourself, and the other side is the you are bad. But the idea
like
is
tip iceberg, like
listen to like your own poem, Gallie. There is no hard line between the reflection, like that's the point, right? Or as what I took as it.
You said you found it quite difficult to write it, right? What was it? There was a particular thing that made it difficult, or like what?
Well, I think,
tell me about it.
Well, weird. I think I started doing it a bit wrong. I like this idea of reflections. I kind of had these sort of 2 voices in my head. But as you know, I also watched the workshop and was trying to like embody the 2 of them, and it was getting, I kept just running up to the long reading. For me just felt like a longer version of the first poem, and so there was a lot, and that's where it was like, it was a lot of fiddling and stuff like that. And weirdly, I think I was trying to do make it harder on myself, like in the same way like Kev added rhyme and it made his easier. I was like at the start with my drafts, like each side were quite short. It was like 2 or 3 words on each side, and weirdly giving it more substance on each side made it easier to flow into stuff. So I think I made it harder on myself, and also I don't think I like it because it seems a bit more, it's a bit more confessional, it's a bit more nice, it's a bit more, it's not, you know, because I would love to do a like, oh, aren't you beautiful, we are the demons on the other side of the mirror. That'd be great fun, but it's hard to fit in contrapuntal, or at least it was always given the time constraint for me.
You're always like oh, this is how I feel anyway, because I've so historically written like comedic in whatever poetry, that as soon as I write something that isn't that, I feel like, oh, this isn't good, because it's not the thing that I'm used to writing. So yeah, I feel you on that. But it is a great piece, and it obviously gives like a lot of, while it's sort of confessional, there's a lot you could do there to play around with it, to like give it a character and a different narrative, and it, you know, it would fit in nicely in a hour-long horror show as a monologue for someone, where it's like someone playing someone playing the other someone, Jekyll and Hyde vibes thing.
Oh, if we're doing the magic show I suggested, you do something like where a mirror trick where it moves independently from you. It's not a mirror, it's like a video.
It's the Dawn French ballerina sketch.
Cool.
We're done now, and I have the super villanelle to crack on with.
That's true, yeah. So post super villanelle, standard Habby, which we will talk about in our next episode, because I have confirmation that Mark did finish the standard Habby in April. Which was the challenge as it was set. We'll talk standard Habby in our wrap-up episode where we chat everything NaPoWriMo, and he will share it then. So tune back next week for that.
Safe.
Yeah. So congratulations. Another fabulous piece to add to your NaPoWriMo collection. You should be really proud of it.
It's so good. And just I was quiet there because it sent my mind going a million different places. And one of the first things that I thought about is actually a palindrome poem by Rita Dove called Mirror, which is linked in the video description of my palindrome poem workshop. And it gets at that idea of like what you see, like self-love versus focusing on imperfections. But yours, I love the fact that there's these two perspectives, but then the combined reading amplifies it. Because for me, it didn't feel like just an extension of column one. It felt like an entirely different thing. It felt like the combination of like sort of empty confidence. So column one, I almost saw as like empty, happy confidence. And column two was like too harsh critical realism. But together it was the actual reality of self-love, which is accepting flaws and loving yourself despite and because of them. And I just feel like there's such a powerful message and so much philosophical interplay there. I don't know. I freaking loved that, Mark. Like, I really want to see it written down. That's like, blew my mind. Awesome job.
Well, thank you. Yes, I'm happy to have been wrong. Yeah.
No, it's so cool.
Congratulations, Mark. You continue your NaPoWriMo completion. I'll get you all a little medal and a certificate.
Sticker.
That's why we're in this, for the certificate.
So obviously it's Katie and I are left. You have the floor to nominate, unless you want to be like, Kev, do another poem. I don't advise that though.
Don't give him that
option. Well, I'm gonna go with Katie, mainly because I think she had a similar experience to me in terms of or maybe not dislike, but being a bit more negative on the front, because then we end on the happy note with you, and as the show you get to have the wrap up and get the final poem. So yeah, I think we'll go with the good doctor.
Cool. So mine, I'm glad Mark's, yours was a bit more sort of like sincere and like getting more tonally kind of like
it felt very uncomfortable for me.
Mine's kind of in a similar vein, and I'll give a bit of a content warning. It's not graphic by any means, but it looks at sort of women's safety. What prompted it was, I don't know if anyone saw the controversy over the Samsung Galaxy advert, but basically Samsung Galaxy, they released an ad which showed a woman waking up at 2 a.m.
Oh my God. Yes.
Waking up at 2 a.m, deciding to go for a run through the empty streets of the city while wearing headphones. And she like
Mark's reaction is the correct reaction.
Yeah, she passes construction workers and like gives them a high five and is smiling at everyone. And I'm like, okay, so there was not a single woman on that creative team.
Yeah, 100%.
I've seen a lot of unrealistic adverts, and this is the most unrealistic one. So obviously for women and femme presenting people more broadly, being alone at night is
Just watching
not
Mark's
a safe thing. Yeah.
Sorry. I am baffled by that. Yeah.
And the idea of wearing headphones, I'm like, oh, anyway. So I was thinking a lot about that. I was thinking about contrapuntal poems as an opportunity to explore different perspectives. So what I decided to do with my contrapuntal poem, it's the same format as what everyone else has chosen so far, where it's 2 columns and then you can read them together. And the left column is the perspective of a woman walking home alone at night. The right column is the perspective of a man walking home alone at night. All of the sort of caveats apply that I can only speak to my experience as a woman. So obviously the male column is my own assumptions. It's a bit longer, so do bear with me. But yeah, okay, here we go. Her. Tonight, it grew dark early. This makes the commute dangerous, but I have to get home. I quick step through this empty city teeming with threats. Although there is no rain, I pull up my hood like a helmet, gripping at any protection from piercing eyes. The street lamps flicker, faulty, flirting with darkness. I am more alert than the morning's bald cries. I tune myself tight, catch every noise, can't afford to be oblivious. I turn up the volume, cars backfiring, bottles smashing, screeching a violent cacophony. I clench my keys between my knuckles, even though their blunt teeth would be feeble against anything real. Beneath my feet, I feel the moldering bones of other women's ghosts, whispering bloody history, wailing beware in an off-kilter rhythm, reliving that nightmare, that untamable dream they did not ask for. Men pass on the other side of the road, casual in their own danger. I envy them, drunk on safety. I wish I could be like that. A god, floating on power, sauntering like I am immortal, I am in no rush, I am already home. Him. I walk home. It's just like every other night. Maybe I could catch the end of the game if I hurry, but no. Right now, I want to laze in the blank yet overflowing potential of the night. I gaze up. The moon has shrouded herself in clouds like delicate armor furling her naked shape. In the absence of her glow, I bask in the pools of yellow artificial light winking like fireflies. I wink too, my eyelids a lullaby, drowsy, already dreading tomorrow's brightness. For now, I ignore it. Bundle my ears in headphones, drown the world out, play jazz, so all I can hear is horns blaring, hi-hat percussion, a din I've come to love, like a talisman. A lucky rabbit's foot, soft, useless, but still it gives me comfort. The cobblestones are slick with sodden leaves, the slipping hazard, so I skip around them. Today, work felt like hell. Thank God I escaped into the sweet evening air where I am free, the inky dark, the other country. I relax, heedless of the world, dancing wild and careless. I walk these streets like I own them because this is my playground, my own glorious home. Together. Tonight, it grew dark early. I walk home. This makes the commute dangerous, but it's just like every other night. I have to get home. Maybe I could catch the end of the game. If I quick step, I hurry through this, but no. Right now, I want to laze in the empty city, blank yet overflowing, teeming with potential threats of the night. Although there is no rain, I gaze up. I pull up my hood. The moon has shrouded herself in clouds like a helmet, like delicate armor, gripping at any protection, furling her naked shape from piercing eyes. In the absence of her glow, I bask in the street lamps. The pools of yellow artificial light flicker, faulty, winking like fireflies flirting with darkness. I wink too, my eyes a lullaby. I am more alert than drowsy, already dreading the morning's bald cries, tomorrow's brightness. For now, I ignore it. I tune myself tight, bundle my ears in headphones, catch every noise, can't afford to drown the world out, be oblivious, play jazz, so I turn up the volume. All I can hear is cars backfiring, horns blaring, hi-hat bottles smashing percussion, screeching a din, a violent cacophony I've come to love. I clench my keys between my knuckles like a talisman, a lucky rabbit's foot, even though their blunt teeth would be feeble, soft, useless against anything real, but still it gives me comfort. Beneath my feet, I feel the cobblestones are slick with the moldering bones of other women's ghosts, sodden leaves whispering bloody history, a slipping hazard, wailing beware, so I skip around them in an off-kilter rhythm. Today, work felt like reliving hell. Thank God I escaped that nightmare into the sweet evening air, that untamable dream where I am free. They did not ask for the inky dark. Men pass on the other side of the road, the other country, casual in their own danger. I relax. I envy them, heedless of the world, drunk on safety, dancing wild, and I wish I could be careless like that. I walk these streets like a god, floating on power, sauntering like I own them because I am immortal. I am in no rush. This is my playground. I am already my own glorious home. That's it. Thanks for bearing with me, guys. I know that that's quite a long piece.
That was amazing. Never
Don't
apologize for a
apologize.
piece
Yeah.
that's that long, that one has a very important message, and two, it's so beautifully crafted. Wow, it's just absolutely amazing. Like, I think I definitely relate to a lot of those feelings. Like, I've had very similar experiences. I'm sure many of our audience listening will have also had experiences like that. And it's such a way to present a concept that's can be very difficult to talk about, but also can be difficult to allow to be poignant, but still offer understanding and a sort of a proper insight into it without blaming anyone, or without sort of getting, you know, the feeling of being accused or whatever gets thrown around, hashtag not all fucking men and all that shit. It's such a
really
way to kind of construct it to.
It was really important
on
to
behalf
me,
of
that
all
the man
men,
was.
Bex, fuck that.
Yeah,
all
right.
men.
Fuck.
Like
Second.
or the vast fucking majority, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's pathetic. Like, it's hard to speak on that poem, Kate. Like, it's beautiful. Like, from a you know, technical standpoint, like, your use of language is always incredible. I think it's interesting because it's a very different approach to Gallie and I, like, structurally.
Yeah.
And I think, like, there is a difficulty to, like, the second reading, the long one, when they are so opposed. And it's interesting to see that, because, like, I think me and Gallie aired for something slightly more cohesive, but wow, like, what a way to weave them and stitch them together to make something that really works. Like,
Yeah.
I don't even know how to sum up that second perspective, because the first two are so clear. Like,
Neither
what is that
do
third
I.
perspective?
I feel like
the
it's
desperate
someone
want mingled with
watching
the anger that you don't have. Like,
Yeah.
you know, rather than the first one being almost that horrible acceptance. And it's even when you brought up the advert, it's that maddening thing of like, no, they shouldn't because it's a safety issue. But that's akin to being like, well, that's like telling, don't go, shouldn't say don't go running at 2 a.m. You should be fucking allowed to go running at 2 a.m. Nothing should happen to you if you go running at 2 a.m. Like it's crazy. And so the anger in that, like, yeah, maybe that's what's there is the first one is that kind of sad acceptance, and the second one is the want to defy it, to go and do the thing regardless of outcome. It's fucking maddening, man. Sorry for us.
It's interesting though, because that was one of the main things I was thinking about, because having these very different columns, and I was really keen for the guy to not be a predator, to just be a bit oblivious and like, I'm walking home and it's a beautiful night.
Yeah, I've had men ask me
like,
why I wouldn't walk. They were like, oh, why wouldn't you go to that area when it's dark? And I was like, are you fucking serious? Like,
this is the thing, because educate guys, not women. Dudes, if you don't know this, don't fucking walk near women you don't know at nighttime. Like, I get you don't think of it, you don't know it's scary for them, but like, cross the street, like, make a noise, show that you're not, like, do something to like show that you're not like following them, like pick a different route.
Please don't yell, I'm not following you. That's Jesus not reassuring. Don't do that. I know you want to be like, no, it's okay, I'm one of the good ones. I'm like, ha ha, ha.
I was meaning like, don't sneak up. Like, I cough like when I'm far away and let them see me cross the street or whatever. Like, I do, you know what I mean? Like, it might be an inconvenience for you to take a slightly different route, but I promise you, as much as a nice guy you think you are, she is terrified. So like, just stay away from them, because they're right to be. It's messed up. So like, if you don't know that, like, please take that on board. Like, be cool about like women walking home, because it's crappy.
Thanks, Kev.
PSA. But yeah, it's fascinating in terms of the contrapuntal, because I kept thinking about that, like these very different perspectives and what does combining them mean. And I really like that reading, actually, Kev, that the first one is like the sad acceptance of like, well, this sucks, and the third one is maybe like, here's what it could be, like, I accept that this is terrifying, but maybe I could have this freedom or something like that. It's a poem that I want to keep playing with, because there's still bits where I'm like, this is fiddly, I think that this could have more potential, and it's quite long, obviously, which isn't necessarily a problem, but there are bits where I think it could be finessed. I realized as well while writing it that I probably put it on the highest difficulty mode, because so many of my lines are just one or two words rather than using full phrases, which means that you're writing a sentence which has to be read in a million different ways with individual words, and it just, what
that does in the sort of like start of the third act of the poem, there is that bit where there is this like back and forth, and to me that, like, it's the escalating feet, it's the hurried pace, it's matching it and that not being okay, you know what I mean? Like
I think it adds like uncertainty, and that it kind of invokes that feeling of like the uncomfortable, because it's not like it's like, where does each line, which one is each poem? Like, when you're talking, I don't know where you are, and that's like part of the feeling that the poem, you know, that uncertainty, that like mystery and discomfort is like present within the third reading of it.
Because on my PSA, if your brain goes, oh, Kev said, don't like lurk behind women in the street, I'll speed up to get past her. Don't do that.
It's so much worse. Don't do that.
Cross the street.
Cross the street.
Take your time. Please. We want you to get home safe as well. Obviously, many people get attacked. Everyone get home safe, individually or with another person if possible. Great.
Because like, there's not a lot for the similar to Kev. There's not a lot I can see said all the bit, but I do want to pass on like my appreciation for how well crafted that poem is, Katie. Like, in terms of that, I know the first thing you're saying is apologizing for the length, which one, don't apologize for what is the incredible thing, and two, don't apologize for essentially a massive flex. You're going like, I'm sorry, my contrapuntal poem is long. Mine is short. Like, and most of the contrapuntals I've seen
than everyone else's
is pretty short. And like, even when you're going, you know, that it becomes 3 poems or it's multiple readings of the thing, like, and what I just one for being like, it's very impressive to be able to do one that long, and two and it's something I love about your thing is that I think similar with Kev said, is you've shown like almost 2 sides of the argument and the whole piece without saying anyone's in the wrong. And like, women, you will all have your own experiences, I imagine, are very similar to things. I know certainly like the second bit, there are bits and stuff that I have learned from things of going like, oh, like why wouldn't they wear headphones? Oh my God, I wear headphones on my walk home. It's there's enough of those, like there's loads of those lines in the guy perspective to go, wait, why would that be a, oh my God, I've never even thought about a thing, which is, I think, a brilliant way of doing it. It reminds me of a similar way to your univocals last year of like her, him, and there.
Yeah, yeah.
Not to,
It was very
but, like,
similar idea though,
great
her and
piece as
him.
well.
Yeah.
but
yeah.
I think a brilliant way of tackling those kind of issues of like, if you were to only do one side, the other side would be, why aren't you telling the other side? You tell both sides and say what it could be together, a vision of something beautiful. And that's what, like, as Kev said, the problem shouldn't be going outside at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
It shouldn't even be,
Yeah.
it shouldn't even be educating guys, because it shouldn't even be, there shouldn't be the danger. The education should be the point that there's no violence, but that's not the case. So yeah, like,
I think the point you make, Gallie, on like the oh no, my thought is like totally abandoned my head. You were saying on the
his and hers, the two sides, that's it.
Yeah. When you look at the two sides and the thing of like the approach to a piece, right? You were like, not blaming. And I think there is, my very flippant answer is fucking blame. Like, the blame is there, it's clear. But I also maintain, and I've always said, like, when you're creating art or a piece to try and like potentially sway minds, that is, like, a hostile tone is not necessarily the best, because then you're gonna convince one person, the person that already agrees with you. Whereas that is a piece that is like a more pleading, like, hey, maybe notice these things, and like if it had that effect like on anyone, then that is only a positive thing.
I think there's a lot of strain that's this is a big argument in terms of like a lot of feminism, LGBTQ plus, etc., like Black history as well, of the people, the victims here do not owe you an explanation, and they are not due to teach you. But if no one explains to anyone that it is wrong, then why would you ever go to learn about it if you don't know that it exists? If your life is such that if you're from an area where there just isn't a lot of people in general, or it's a majoritively white, or whatever your situation is, you have to open the door for people to come in and want to learn about it. Obviously, you're not there to be their, bloody history teacher, go and look up some stuff, but if you don't know where to start, like where do you go? And it's this piece, and there's loads of other pieces like this for over YouTube on all of these issues. I think poetry has such a way of presenting an idea in such a beautiful but ultimately peaceful way that will allow that introspective without it seeming like you're the worst, everything you've ever done, everyone, your dad's the worst, your granddad's the worst. Like, it's not about that. It's about looking at the situation as it is, and how can, as a society, we look to better the lives not only of these people but of everyone altogether, and ensuring safety. That's thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
This is amazing. Theoretically, this is a podcast about contrapuntal poetry, but we've made it about like safety, protect
we
your
will
community.
happily have a
But
feminism
such a
episode. It's not a problem.
But the point you're both kind of making there is interesting, because like you look at like a poem, and no one should take their moral outlook from a poem. You shouldn't learn about history from a poem. You shouldn't do any of those things directly from a poem. But like, if you absorb poetry, especially like to the degree we do, like, you see all these subjects tackled. It's the thing I always say is best about poetry, particularly spoken word poetry, is its ability to be responsive, to be a conversation, to be topical, to take in any subject in any genre, in any tone, any emotional state. All those things are so, none of that matters to affect the practice. So like, it's the best thing about it, and you can spark an idea and then go and stumble down a rabbit hole. Like, I've done that with like plenty of poems, seen a thing and went, oh, that's really interesting, like looked stuff up, and not necessarily like learned from the poem, but being directed to go and learn about something. So like,
Oh, thank you guys. That
Contrapuntal.
really means a lot.
Congratulations, Katie. You have completed your NaPoWriMo. Would you like to nominate someone?
There's Perry. He said he was going to do it.
Perry.
Well,
Bex,
he's not here, so I can't hold him accountable. Absolutely. Mine doesn't have a content warning, other than its content is much shorter than everyone else's. I think most of us did. Katie Ailes, Dr. Katie Ailes. I don't know if you've met her.
Who dat?
She runs
sounds
workshops
fancy.
on our Patreon on occasion. We have stuff coming up with that we'll talk about next week and whatever. But earlier this month, we did a workshop where we looked at writing using like instructions and things like that. And the piece I ended up coming up with, I was really happy with. And actually, it was kind of more confessional and more personal and less funny and more like sweet.
Beautiful.
It's really cute. And I hadn't really written like that before, and everyone seemed to like it. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna try again. And I've written another cute piece, and I think it is really cute. So it's a bit gushy, but I don't mind it. I feel like this is like honest and whatever. So I will read it, column 1, column 2. I will read it the same way that everyone else has. And yeah, it doesn't have a title. I have felt the rain. Droplets tumble slow, then a sudden rush, the clouds finally break. Thunder and lightning as hot and cold air meet, breaking the summer heat, a sweet relief. It felt like you, as our eyes meet, as hands touch, and my heart lets you in. Sparks jolt through my fingers intertwined, breath held in my chest as we kiss, announcing love's first steps. I felt the rain. It felt like you. Droplets tumble slow as our eyes meet, then a sudden rush as our hands touch, the clouds finally break, and my heart lets you in. Thunder and lightning, sparks jolts through fingers intertwined as hot and cold air meet, breath held in my chest, breaking the summer heat as we kiss, a sweet relief announcing love's first steps. And that's my piece.
Nice. I love that so much.
I'm gonna
That's
get
so
in
nice.
before all the praise and comments come in. There was a moment, despite all your warnings, that for like the first few stanzas, I went, "This could be a cow in a field." Until you said hands, I was like, "Is she pulling the double blunt?" No,
The ultimate
it's-
fake
as
out.
hooves meet. Oh my god.
I there was a moment where I was like, "It's sunny. I'm in a field. Why do I think
Everyone
I'm in a
take
field?"
5. Let me
No,
know.
But no, that was beautiful. I didn't get to be in that workshop, so I didn't get to
Yeah,
see
you
the
were
delivery
dying,
of
it's
said.
bad.
I heard nothing but wonderful things, so it is very like really nice to see something very wholesome, very sweet,
Yeah.
very like good job.
And there's always something to just like a love poem. I love love poems, like totally unironic, but
Yeah.
like they get a lot of shit, right? Like,
They
but
do.
I think
That's
there's
true.
something
I give love
You've
poems a lot
given
of
them
shit.
a lot of shit in the past.
totally like, but I think there is a thing to, it's why people like rom-coms so much, even when they're made very badly. You know what I mean? There's still something that like, because that's the thing,
Especially
you
when
can
they're made
you can
really
get away
badly.
with making a rom-com very, very poorly and it'll still be
Evidently.
successful. Yeah. And so like, because I think that is the one thing everyone understands. Everyone understands love. Like there is maybe bar of like 3 people ever. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
everyone has had a moment, either platonic or paternal or maternal or whatever. Like there's everyone knows what it's like or wants to have it. It's like the most universally shared feeling. And I just think like there's so much beautiful imagery and wordplay around that, and like you hit it so nicely, Bex. Like I don't think that poem is a reinvention of the wheel.
No,
but
absolutely not.
But I think it's just a very nice piece, and like sometimes that is just nice to hear someone express like a genuine happy emotion. And I think the use of contrapuntal is particularly nice because it's what you know about a person. And I know that you are writing that poem not immediately after a first kiss, but after many, many kisses, I assume.
Yeah. No, we've only kissed once, so we're saving for marriage.
The contrapuntal structure like reinforces that. It's the ability to say the same thing in a different way later on and for it to mean just as much. And that idea of like a returning first kiss, different, new every time, but fundamentally the same. And I think there's like a really beautiful image to that. So I love it.
Thanks. I like it too. It was nice to write. I was actually really weirdly, even though I wanted to write something funny, and I watched Tim Minchin a lot, and he has a piece called Cont.
yes
aka context, right? And if you haven't seen it, it's fucking great, and it's very contrapuntal in style, but not totally. Like it's not, he couldn't read the second part of it separately, and it makes sense, but all together, like the way he presents it is like a very humorous
it's all
thing.
set up and twist,
like, that's the whole point of it. So it's not like fully a contrapuntal poem, but I liked that idea of being like, so I basically started writing it as complete sentences and then broke stuff apart to create like 2 pieces. So that's why like there's thunder and lightning, and then it goes sparks in a different one, because that was a full line that I just broke up. So yeah,
That's
it's also
a great
why it's
way
short.
of doing that.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's funny because like there's so many ways of going about a contrapuntal poem, and it's
Yeah.
a thing that I hope I say in the workshop. But if I don't, like, if you're trying to write contrapuntal poems and my
Mhm.
workshop isn't working for you, like, you can just
Yeah.
try writing a poem, splitting it in two, and then fiddling with it. Like, there's so many approaches here.
Yeah.
It is all just trial and error. The way that my brain works is
Mhm.
not the way that your brain
Yeah.
works, I hope. Jesus.
Yeah.
But no, Bex, I found that so beautiful. And also just thinking about different forms of love. And for me, like thunder and lightning and the heat breaking is
Yeah.
always a really like sensual, sexy thing.
Sexy.
But I love that for like, it didn't feel like that. It was more of a, I mean, not platonic, but
Yeah,
like romantic. And there's so
Yeah.
many ways of reading sort of common themes and metaphors. And I felt like you could have done something much more cliched and didn't, which was
Yeah,
really
I
lovely.
originally had like additional bits in there that was a lot about like turbulent seas and calming the storm and like that kind of stuff. And it kind of felt, in the end, it kind of felt wrong because it was giving the
Yeah.
impression that it was like, oh, here's this man to come and make me whole. And it wasn't, that's not what I meant at all. And it was just like, that was the impression it was giving. So I took out, that's why it's so short. It's like, took out a whole bunch of stuff that I was like, this doesn't give the message that I want it to. The message is just like, it's this nice moment, but it's not about like, you know, relationships don't define you. You don't get into a couple or a triple or whatever your jig is to be a whole because you're completed by someone else. Like,
You're
it's not
wrong,
about
Plato.
that. Yeah, right. It's like
the love poetry of folk like, you know, Shelley, who, you know, Kate
Yeah.
has already torn apart, or like Byron or whatever. Like these people that, like, you know, it is these grand, like everything's paired with some epic metaphor. I much prefer love poems that are quiet. Like
Yeah.
one of my favorite pieces that gets me very emotional is Kate like wrote a poem about, you know, kind of us, and it was
Yeah.
like the key hinging part of it is like this constant exchange of cups of tea. And
Yeah.
like there's you know, that's not, you know, this earth-shattering love,
Yeah.
but that's the truth of love, is like
Yeah.
very little of your relationship will be this whirlwind of
Yeah.
romance or this like storm of
He
you know,
took the recycling out.
yeah, or anger. You know, the vast majority of any long-term relationship is like
Yeah.
quiet acceptance and
Yeah,
small moments and
stability.
tiny gestures. Like,
Yeah.
and poems that get into that. I think Holly McNish writes
Yeah.
very much in that vein of someone who writes about like these quiet small moments that like pair into a bigger thing. It's a beautiful way to go, Bex. I think that's very in that vein.
Yeah, it felt really different, and obviously it was, I just didn't really feel like a comedy kind of fit, because the thing about it's like only funny once. When you have to explain the joke, it's not funny anymore. So it's like, well, how do I do that with like making the punchline be a whole thing together? And I was like, oh, that feels weird. So
Yeah,
I
I wonder
decided
how you'd
against that.
write
Yeah.
contrapuntal humor, but that's a really
Mhm.
interesting question, actually.
Yeah, so obviously we've all done it. We've completed our poems for NaPoWriMo. Well
team!
done to everyone who wrote 30 poems. Whether you wrote one poem this month, if that is more than you normally write, then you have succeeded in the mission of NaPoWriMo, which is just to get more poetry out there.
And
while
hey, if you only did 4
Yeah.
like Gallie, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
Gallie did 5. As I
Ooh.
said, we literally do not have time on this episode to discuss his standard Habby, so it will have to wait until next week. I believe Mark, I trust him that he did it.
He literally
trust
has a
poets,
poem
Bex.
called
Don't
Don't
trust
Trust
Poets.
Poets.
Except for him,
Except for
because
me.
why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you trust me?
Oh, let me get my big list.
Yeah. NaPoWriMo is obviously just about writing, and while we've done everything in form and we've written to form, it's really just what we hope to do mainly is just to familiarize people with the options that they have. You do not have to write any poems in any form. That is completely not the point. Obviously for us it was, because that was the challenge that we set, but what it was really meant to do is just educate us on what the tools that we are available. It's like go into the gym and you get a session the first time that tells you what all the things do, like that. We're doing that for you over weeks with poems, and we just want to let you know that if you're looking to write something and you're finding it hard, then maybe a form will help you. But we will talk more about that next week. We are going to be sharing poems from you, the audience. So we've asked some amazing poets who've been writing if we can share work from them. So that will be coming up. Mark will be sharing his standard Habby. We'll be talking about the 2022 NaPoWriMo journey. And maybe we'll be looking at what we might want in 2023, because April comes around hella quick.
It's not a
every
real year.
year.
That's not a
So
thing.
thank you so much for joining us. If you are listening to this on a podcast platform, please give us a rate, because we look and no one does, and it makes me sad, but I would love it. It would be great. If you are watching this on YouTube, hi, you can see how great I look. Thank you for the forward compliments on my makeup, which I'm sure there are many in the comment section. Yeah, if you've sat through an hour,
subscribe.
Yeah, if you've sat through an hour,
you like it.
It's time to subscribe and support us, so we know that you like this, so we can make more. If you are Edinburgh based, even if it is outwith of April, we are almost certainly doing a show this month in Edinburgh. Just check us out on Twitter. Even if this is like 2023, it's very likely we will have a show going on. If it's 2025, we've probably got shows going on in Edinburgh. But you can also have a look. We have shows in this year, 2022, the year of our Lord and Savior, 2022. In Aberdeen, in Dumfries, the boys are going to Glastonbury. There's loads of stuff happening. We'll be all over the place, and there is always poetry near you, even if it's not from us. So just hit us up where you are, and we will find you a spoken word night where you can go and share your fabulous form pieces. Please continue to support us on Patreon. Thank you to all our Patreon people who get this a day early. So we really appreciate you and your support of us. And we will see you next week to wrap all this NaPoWriMo in a little bow and send it off into the future. Everybody say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Subscribe.